This UCSD TV program is presented by University of California Television. Like what you learn? Visit our website or follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with the latest programs. Also, make sure to check out and subscribe to our YouTube original channel, UCTV Prime, available only on YouTube.
What does it mean to be musical?
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 What does it
Mean
What does it mean
To be
Musical.
Why is music such a potent form of human expression? How do musicians select, interpret, and perform compositions? What's distinctive about the human voice? We've asked 6 extraordinary scholars and artists to explore the magic that is music.
We're very, very lucky to have Susan Narucki here at UCSD. She has a career that is still active, but that has spanned 2 decades. The list of famous conductors, orchestras, gatherings, groups that she's performed with would take me longer to list for you than her performance tonight. But she has appeared with James Levine, Boulez, Esa-Pekka Salonen, Michael Tilson Thomas. She has pioneered works by contemporary composers George Crumb and Elliott Carter. She won a Grammy for George Crumb's Star Child and received a Grammy nomination for Elliott Carter's Tempo e Tempi. This last season, in fact, I believe it was just last month, she made her debut with the Opéra de Montpellier in France, double bill that includes the French premiere of Carter's What Next and the world premiere of Matisse Nitschke's Jetzt. And she's a socially active performer too, something I admire her for tremendously. She's a project leader and soloist in Cuatro Corridos. That's a multidisciplinary music theater project, libretto by the Mexican novelist Jorge Volpi, and it addresses the subject, something very relevant to our life here in San Diego, of human trafficking across the US-Mexican border. She's been with us here at UCSD since 2008 as professor of music. Now, she will be joined on stage by Steve Lewis as her accompanist. He is a composer, pianist, one of our advanced candidates in the Doctor of Musical Arts program. He works as a professional accompanist, has for several years in San Diego and in the Midwest, and is actually having one of his compositions premiered this May by Palimpsest, that is the UCSD Graduate Student Ensemble. Just a quick note, there will be a reception afterwards. You can purchase Professor Narucki's CDs. And at this point, I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming on stage Susan Narucki and joining her at the piano, Steve Lewis.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Susan Narucki. I serve as professor and associate chair of the Department of Music. And I'd like to add my welcome to you to this, our home, the Conrad Prebys Music Center, and our magnificent concert hall. Through the generosity of Conrad Prebys and numerous members of the San Diego community, we, the faculty and students at the Department of Music, and our distinguished guests, are able to present music in this jewel of a hall. Its acoustics rival any in the entire world. We're happy to have you here this evening, and we hope that you'll join our audience family in the future. The song that Steve and I just presented is by Alexander Zemlinsky, an Austrian composer, and it was written in 1903. It's called Meeraugen, literally translated, ocean eyes, eyes of the ocean. In it, the poet notices the mysterious, profound gaze of his beloved and compares it to the sea. The poet wonders, "What are your eyes asking of me?" And goes on to say, "My heart wants to sink deep into your eyes, beneath their placid surface, to take an unknowable journey into the depths of your soul." And in some way, this describes the essence of what I would like to speak to you about this evening. The title of my presentation is Utterance, Ritual Expression: Why Singing Makes Us Human. Initially, I thought I would speak about singing over the course of human history in a very general way. But when I began to prepare for this talk, I realized that what I want to say is something much more specific. Not why singing makes us human, but rather how singing has informed my experience as a human being. You may think that I overstate it, but the truth is I've spent almost every day of the last 30 years thinking about singing, about making music. Singing and music have given me the life that I have, influenced the choices that I've made, led me to this moment standing here in front of you. So this evening, I'd like to share with you a bit about my journey and process. I'd like to share insights into what I do and what intrigues me about the music that I hold so dear. People often ask me if I came from a family of singers. Well, in a way, I suppose that I did. One of my earliest memories is hearing my father sing. My father had a beautiful, beautiful baritone voice, and any time that we were in the car for more than 10 minutes, he would sing. He loved country western songs, especially Hank Williams, which was strange because we were an Italian, Polish-American family living near Newark, New Jersey. And he loved to croon songs by Bing Crosby, Hoagie Carmichael, Nat King Cole. Anytime he sang, I was riveted. I couldn't take my ears or eyes off of him. So it's no wonder that I began singing when I was 4 or 5 years old. As soon as I could talk, I started to sing. But I did not become a pop singer or the next Patsy Cline. I found something different. What set me on the path I've been on for 3 decades was hearing classical singing and classical art song. So what is classical singing? What do classically trained singers do? Simply stated, very simply, classical singing is the coordination of 2 things: a motor, which is our breath, and a sounding board, the resonance chambers of our body. In classical singing, compressed breath from our lungs passes through our vocal tract over the vocal folds or vocal cords. And our goal is to make a rounded, even tone throughout all our registers. In classical singing, our body is the instrument. And through this process, we're able to project our voices without amplification over a sound field as dense as an orchestra. To speak with you about how to develop this technique would take much, much longer than the scope of this talk. In fact, like most singers who are active in their performing careers, as I am, I'm still working on it. I will leave it very simply at this. The secret of classical singing, why we all fall in love with it, is when you are singing well, the physical sensations are so remarkable, pleasurable, astonishing. Classical singers train their bodies to hold certain positions, some which would not seem necessarily easy or natural, in order to build an instrument on the inside that maximizes this combination of motor and sounding board, or breath and body. Our goal is to transmit sound efficiently, without effort, and to develop the unique characteristics of our voice to its greatest potential. Our bodies are our instruments, so no two voices sound alike. But learning to make that sound was only one aspect of what intrigued me. What really captured my imagination was the marriage of poetry and music that we find in classical art song. Art song. Those miniature dramas in which the voice and piano are equal partners, each contributing to the effect of the whole. That's what first drew me to classical singing. And Zemlinsky's Meeraugen, which we heard, is one such piece. Many of you are music lovers, and undoubtedly you are very familiar with this musical form. But you may never have thought about the process through which a singer transforms the musical score into performance. So I would like to take a few moments and invite you into that process by looking at another song, Der Jüngling und der Tod by Franz Schubert, The Youth and Death. This song comes from Schubert's middle period as a composer, 1817, before the famous song cycles of his maturity. Yet it is also a remarkable song. The poem is a dialogue between the youth and death. The youth begins, "The sun sinks. Oh, I wish I could depart with it, that I could vanish with its last ray, that I could be released from this nameless pain and fly to a better world. Oh, come, death, relieve my suffering. I smile at you, O man of bone. Take me to the land of dreams." Death replies, "In my arms, it is cool and peaceful. You call, I will relieve your pain." How does Schubert take this simple poem and transform it into an entire world? Well, let's listen first to the piano introduction. What do we notice? The minor key, the voicing of the chords, the slow tempo, and especially something we call a double dotted rhythm. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. We hear this in other song composers as well. We call it a kind of heartbeat rhythm. Ba-bum, ba-bum. And here, the heart is clearly weighed down. After this introduction, the vocal line bursts forth with "The sun sinks. Oh, I wish. Oh, I wish." Schubert repeats these words to give the singer a chance to change the color of the sound or alter the declamation. And then a change of harmony and another outburst, that I could depart with your last ray. Then Schubert introduces a new idea in the accompaniment. Within this slow tempo, an eighth note pattern, broken up between the bass and treble, creating a kind of forward motion. Schubert also gives the piano a melodic fragment that responds to the vocal line. So what happens is a musical dialogue begins. The singer makes a statement, the piano responds, almost completing the sentence, or carrying the meaning a bit further each time with a kind of greater intensity. So, to me, that music suggests that the youth is moving towards something, being drawn, being led. The youth then speaks to death directly and asks, "Give me peace." The music becomes then much gentler. "I smile at you, O man of bone. Take me to the world of dreams." And then the singer implores death to come. Then the musical material changes. We enter a different world, a majestic world, which begins with a major key before turning again to minor. When death finally sings and says, "You will rest cool and safe in my arms," we hear that the vocal writing is very different. Death sings in a more constrained manner, with notes of longer duration and in a more limited range. Then there's a final, endless vocal cadence that suggests eternity, rest. You know, it's all notated. It's all there. For a singer, this is the challenge, to inhabit this beautiful text, to illuminate it, to respect the composer's intention. Yet, there are many ways, so many ways, in which each singer makes the piece his or her own. Through choices of tone color, articulation, phrasing, giving some words just a bit more weight or emphasis. And perhaps above all, how each singer and accompanist hear and respond to each other. It's in this way that we make a piece our own. So now that I've told you a little bit about it, Steve and I will present it for you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, all of the speakers you've heard on this series examine the details of our source material as musicians. That's musical scores, with care and precision. We're all really lucky to have been able to spend our lives immersed in the details of great works of art, with the goal of recreating them through the act of performance. I can tell you, it's endlessly fascinating. In fact, I've spent years thinking about some pieces, and still, every time I perform them, I discover something new, something I hadn't heard before. That's what great art can do. It speaks to us through time, and sometimes in ways we never could have expected. You know, language and cultures are constantly evolving, and music is a living language. The music of our time reflects the world that we live in. Like some of my colleagues on this series, I've also dedicated a large part of my career to the performance of the music of my time. Now, I did not set out to do this. I thought, like most young singers, that I would be singing the roles of great operatic heroines in fabulous costumes all over the world. But through a series of circumstances as unpredictable as any that you'd find in the course of any performing career, I found myself given an opportunity which brought me in contact with modern music and with one of the great composers of our time, the Hungarian Yuri Kurtag. And this encounter set me in a new direction as a singer. I met Mr. Kurtag in 1986 when I had the good fortune to be asked to sing the West Coast premiere of a piece of his at the Ojai Festival with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, with 8 weeks' notice after a famous soloist canceled. That happens a lot when you're very young. I had been out of school a few years. It turned out the conductor of the piece knew me through some other circumstances, which were quite unusual. He was actually Kent Nagano, and at that time still building his career, and liked to run through operas that he was going to conduct with young singers. And through one of these circumstances, which involved singing in a leather factory and a canned ham, that's, if you want to find out about that in the Q&A, I'll tell you. But through those circumstances, he knew that I had the ability to learn difficult music, and that I would work very hard. So famous soloist canceled, and he recommended that they hired me. This was a big break. I had been out of school for a few years, and this was the most important professional engagement that I had had up until this point. So in 8 weeks, I had to prepare a 35-minute piece for voice and orchestra in Russian, a language in which I had never sung, about the ecstasy and heartbreak of a love affair. Okay. All right, so I immersed myself in this strange composition, often completely confused and lost in the process. Why lost, you may ask? Because unlike the two composers whose music you have heard so far this evening, Zemlinsky and Schubert, Kurtag does not use traditional notation in his scores. So in Zemlinsky we hear ba, 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 da, da, 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. In Schubert we hear ba, bam, 2, 3, ba, bam. It's great. Fantastic. Very clear. Both composers set up a structure, a taktus, a pulse on which the music is built. So this taktus or pulse is indicated by something that many of you are familiar with, a time signature. In both these cases, 4/4. And that means 4 beats to the measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. So I'm opening Kurtag's score, and I'm noticing there's no time signature anywhere. Instead, there are large numbers once in a while that tell you something about the number of beats that should be in the bar, and an elaborate key, a chart of symbols that indicate duration. It was amazing. It was a world unto its own. He's parsing duration of both pitch and rests to a very, 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 very fine degree. I mean, there were 64 symbols on that page. It was unbelievable. So what I realized through working on this music was that he was looking for a way to envision two concepts. He wanted to reflect the speech rhythms of the language that he sets exactly. And something else. His concept was that music needs to be spontaneous, asymmetrical, completely fluid. It's hard to demonstrate this in a lecture, but I want to give it a shot. What do I mean by this? Let's take this poem. For 15 years, I've been writing verse, and now, when I might become a poet, I just stand here by the ironworks and have no words for the moonlit sky. Beautiful poem. If we were to think of this text as being attached to a pulse or a tactus, how could it sound? Well, we could make the sounds of equal duration. For 15 years I've been writing verse, and now when I might become a poet, not so interesting. We could also hang the words on a regular beat pattern like this. For 15 years I've been writing verse, and now when I might become a poet. Well, that's nice. It's okay. Those are two solutions. But this poem describes the sense of excitement and wonder we have when we behold something absolutely beautiful, and the frustration that this poet has in not being able to find the words that will immortalize this experience. So what if we did this instead? For 15 years I've been writing verse, and now when I might become a poet, I just stand here by the ironworks and have no words for the moonlit sky. Tisenuti viro cultamente smost, omicor cultelerek megre, choc allo kita voschar segleten, sninchen sovama hud vilagos igre. You may have guessed the second version in Hungarian is Kurtag's. I had to think of some way to explain this. What does he do that's so fascinating? He indicates freddo, parlato, sonore, cold, in a speaking style, sonorous. And then he asks the singer to sing or speak many words on one pitch. Then he introduces wider and wider intervals to create tension, frustration. Which then ends in almost nothing, because the poet can't find any words. So the words are unhooked from a pulse, but they still have direction. Believe it or not, that music is notated, but the interpreter is expected, within that notation, to follow the speech inflections of the Hungarian language and to convey the emotional sense behind the poem. So, For me, this is one of the most exciting things about working with the music of our time. This is entering into a composer's unique musical language. As I said, it's a living language. Kurtag was looking for a new way to relate to musical structure, to pulse, to our sense of time. And I realized this in the first encounter with the music. It did drive me crazy, but it was thrilling. It was vexing until I learned it, until I understood it. But ultimately, it was supremely satisfying. After that concert, which went well, I found myself spending more and more time with modern music. It's funny, I don't remember making a conscious choice to do this, but I just found myself fascinated by it. And I followed where my interests were leading me. So now I'd like to sing a few of these very, very short pieces by Kurtag for you. These are excerpts from his Attila József fragments written in 1986. The translations are, "Tell me, what should I do to make you love me? If I speak, don't laugh or mock me. I'm like a car with my motor racing, and there's no road. And when I speak, there's no sense or order. The evening is as soft as a grape, rolling gently among my memories. It's a blonde, blonde evening, but I can't remember." And then, for 15 years, I've been writing verse, and now when I might become a poet, I just stand here by the ironworks and have no words for the moonlit sky. And the fourth, "No, no," I should shout, but instead I whisper, "Yes, yes," so that fate might bring a gentle rocking to the waters of this sea of tears. Yes.
A sírva fogadat ne neves, mint a motor, mely már begyulladt, de nincsen nyújtás, nem gyulladt, olyan vagyok. S a padrőbalnék, értelmetlen szavakat szólnék. Nem emlékszem. 15 évére küldtem, és most, amikor küldtelenek végre, csak állok itt a vascsar szegleten, s nincsen szavam a hódvilágos égre. Nem kell neki öltöznom, sok-sokokon, igen, igen, hogy a sors, ringat az ozon, a tenger sírás vizeiben. Igen. Küldte
Thank you. Thank you so much. So the 4 pieces that were unaccompanied, the solo pieces, those are part of a 12-minute song cycle that Kurtag wrote for unaccompanied soprano, set to text by Attila József, the great Hungarian poet. And you know, I said that music reflects our time. What you just heard me sing, those 4 pieces, are snippets, they're fragments. Our culture is full of fragmented experiences. We see this in narrative forms in television, film, music. If you think about it, even our life experiences now are constantly interrupted. But in 1986, when this piece was written, that was not the case. It was the direction where the culture was headed. The composer saw this, felt this, and he responded by developing a compositional language that reflected this. Again, I say, the music of our time tells us about our time. It's difficult to provide an adequate context in a lecture format like this, but I do hope that I've given you some sense of the immediacy and drama of this music. And for any of you who are interested in this strange notation, I actually brought the score. The other piece you heard was by Zoltán Kodály. It's one of the Hungarian folk songs that he set. Women sitting under a blooming pear tree, waiting for men returning from war. How lucky we are, it says, to be together. It's a simple folk song that Kodály elevates with his magnificent accompaniment. And it brings me to the final subject of my talk. So far, I've talked with you about art song, a traditional musical form, and about my interest in new forms of expression, modern music. But now I'd like to bring our talk back to a broader subject: why we sing, why we make music. Singing is, at its essence, the urgent need to communicate. I have a composer friend who's always talking about song emergencies, moments in life that can only be rescued or redeemed by music. It's a funny thing to say. It's a funny way to say it. But I like thinking about it that way. What does music bring to our lives? Are there moments that can only be rescued by music? Experiences that can be crystallized, heightened by the kind of communication that music brings? I can think of one such instance if I continue my story about working with Kurtag. After I first met him and did a performance of his works, he actually gave me the scores to everything he ever wrote. And one of the scores was that piece that you just heard me sing. I was so intrigued by it that I wanted to work on it. Of course, it was in Hungarian. It had the same notation that I had already seen in his works. What I realized was, although I could learn the language, I could learn the pitches and the rhythms, I would never really understand it unless I went and worked with him directly. So I did that. I traveled to Szombathely, Hungary in 1988 in order to work with him for 2 weeks at a summer festival. 1988, 1 year before the Berlin Wall fell. Yeah. The journey was a remarkable experience. I remember I flew to Vienna, I took a train, and I noticed how things changed once the train crossed the border. Soldiers were everywhere. The speed of the train slowed. It had to, because the tracks were not in good repair. Everything was dusty, broken down, lit with 10-watt light bulbs. The festival was housed in some kind of a school. It was dilapidated, neglected. But this place was full of life. During my 2 weeks there, I could not literally believe what I was hearing and seeing. The nightly concerts were completely full. 700 people gathered in the audience every night, sitting on the edge of their seats to listen to a string quartet, a vocal recital, a piece of chamber music, played with a kind of intensity of expression that was stunning. It seemed to me music was a living language which brought people together, which was able to express so many, many things which people there longed to say, but would not, could not. How thrilling it was to be in an environment where music seemed to satisfy an urgent need to communicate. That is the benchmark for the music I hear, and it's what I try to do. All cultures sing. All cultures use their voices to make music. And it's such a simple thing. Continuous, stopped sounds, vowels and consonants, breath, lips, tongue, teeth, bones, air. Singing connects us in a visceral way. Anytime a person comes on stage and takes in breath and opens their mouth, it sets up part of a connection. There's almost an electric charge in the room because we know instinctively what it is to complete that circuit. Whether or not we have sung or not, we know what it is to use our voice to make sound, to make music. Singing is an ancient connection to our history on the planet. Singing is a living language that reflects our own time. Ritual, utterance, expression. Well, the ritual of performance brings us together. In the constantly shifting utterance of language, we're led to expression, the journey of our inner lives that all of us seek and wish to share. I guess to sum it up, I would say that a life spent singing has allowed me the extraordinary privilege of developing a rich inner world, a way of losing myself and finding myself over and over and over again in the miracles of great music and those who've created it, and the privilege of sharing it with those who come to listen. So I think in one way I'm going to leave you right where I started, with a very simple song that my dad probably would have loved, by an American composer, Mark Blitzstein, "Stay in My Arms."